update to a story that we have been tracking. It gives insight to what was actually happening behind the scenes when the Fed back in 2008 bailed out U.S. banks. Today, in a case brought by Bloomberg LP, the U.S. Court of Appeals in New York said the Fed must disclose the names of banks that might have failed without the $2 trillion government bailout. And for more on the story, we bring in Amanda Bennett, executive editor of projects and investigations for Bloomberg News. And Amanda, it's really an appeals court upholding its own earlier decision, right? Because the Fed went back and tried to get it thrown out.
That's correct, and the appeals court declined to do so.
The question at this point, which you answer to some extent in your story, is does this now move up to the Supreme Court? And as far as at least one of the bodies that was working with the Fed in this, or on the side of the Fed, the Clearinghouse Association, that's clear they're going to try and get to the High Court.
Well, right now they have the opportunity to decide whether or not to take it to the Supreme Court. The Clearinghouse, which is a body of banks, has said in the past that they intend to do so, although we don't know for certain whether they plan to do it or not. They have now 7 days to tell the court whether or not they plan to do that. That would be the next step. And
then, of course, the Supreme Court decides whether or not it hears the case.
That's correct. Then the Supreme Court has an opportunity to decide whether or not it wants to hear it.
What are we looking for from the Fed? What do we want from Ben Bernanke? What kind of transparency are we demanding that he is not willing to give us?
This whole case began with the Freedom of Information Act request, where we were looking to find out the names of the banks that the Fed lent money to in the wake of the financial crisis. We wanted to know who went to the Fed for money, how much money they got, and what they put up for collateral. We made a Freedom of Information Act request. The Fed declined to provide the information, and then we, with our late colleague Mark Pittman, decided to sue the Fed for that information.
So the next step for us is we just wait to see what the Fed does, because we haven't gotten them to release the information to us yet.
That's correct. So within the next 90 days or so, either they have to decide whether or not they want to go to the Supreme Court, or ultimately they will then be required to release the documents.
What are they worried that we're going to find? Because it would seem that a Fed, when Ben Bernanke came in, he said he wants to increase transparency. It would seem that giving out this kind of information would be the first thing on his list of things to do, but he doesn't want to.
Well, and the reason Bloomberg is pursuing this is our great and profound belief in transparency. So that's what we're looking for. In their court arguments, they have said that it could stigmatize the banks if people were to know which banks went to the Fed for bailout money.
Although we know to some extent which banks have used those emergency measures there, and there are numerous. I mean, all of them on Wall Street, let's say.
Well, and they say that now that it would be stigmatizing to know which bank specifically got what and what collateral they put up. We think that that's the taxpayer's right to know.
All right, Amanda, thanks very much. It's a great story. Obviously, it was fantastic to have Mark Pittman working on this, and we appreciate you continuing our efforts for us here at Bloomberg LP.
Thank you so much.
We are